Before I tell you this story, I want you to imagine this. A young woman so hungry, she asked a stranger at a fancy restaurant, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" Now, most people would laugh, or maybe ignore her. But this time, the man she asked was a millionaire. And when he looked into her eyes, what happened next will leave you speechless. If you love stories where kindness meets destiny, where pain turns into miracles, make sure you subscribe right now because trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. It was a cold evening in London, the kind of night when city lights shimmered on the wet pavement after a drizzle, and people hurried past one another, wrapped in their coats, rushing home to warm kitchens and waiting dinners. But for Lily, there was no warm kitchen waiting. Her stomach had been growling since morning, and the few coins in her pocket couldn't even buy a cup of tea. She had been walking for hours, her shoes worn thin, the hem of her coat damp from puddles, her eyes darting hopefully at bakeries and restaurants where the smell of roasted chicken, fresh bread, and simmering soups made her hunger almost unbearable. She wasn't always like this. Once, she had a family, a small but cozy flat, and dreams of becoming a nurse. But life, with its cruel twists, had stripped her of those comforts. Her mother had died young, her father had abandoned them long before, and just 2 years ago, the foster home that raised her had shut down, leaving her with nothing but a few hand-me-downs, and the determination to survive. That night, she stopped outside a luxurious restaurant in Mayfair. Through the tall glass windows, she saw chandeliers glittering like diamonds, and people dressed in designer suits and gowns laughing over wine and meals that cost more than she had ever held in her hand. Her throat tightened. She pressed her palm against her belly, trying to calm the gnawing emptiness. She knew begging was humiliating, and she had always promised herself she would never do it. But desperation has a way of bending even the strongest. Vows. Inside, at a table near the window, sat Alexander Whitmore. To the world, he was a millionaire entrepreneur, a man whose name was on magazines, a man people whispered about in boardrooms. To himself, he was just a tired soul, worn down by endless business deals and a hollow mansion that never felt like home. His wealth was vast, his reputation envied, but joy, that had slipped from his life long ago, after betrayal from those he trusted and the loss of someone he once loved. He was eating dinner alone that night, pushing around his steak more than savoring it. People often thought millionaires were untouchable, above the struggles of ordinary men. But Alexander knew loneliness in a way that gnawed at him just as fiercely as hunger gnawed at the girl staring through the glass. Lily stood there longer than she realized, until her courage, fragile but burning inside her, pushed her through the door. The motard frowned immediately at her appearance, her coat frayed, her hair tangled, her shoes wet. But before he could usher her out, she walked straight to Alexander's table, her voice trembling but steady enough to be heard. May I have your leftovers, sir?" The restaurant fell silent. Forks paused mid-air. Whispers rippled across tables. Alexander looked up slowly, his blue eyes meeting hers. And in that instant, something happened. España he couldn't explain. Like a thread connecting to lives that were meant to collide. She expected anger, mockery, maybe pity. But instead, his lips curved into something he hadn't felt in years. A genuine, unforced smile. "Sit," he said simply, pulling out the chair across from him. Lily froze. "I didn't mean Nija," Sid he repeated, softer this time, but with a firmness that left no room for doubt. And though every eye in the restaurant was on her, she slid into the chair, her hands trembling on her lap. The motard rushed forward. "Sir, perhaps we should." "No," Alexander interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. "Bring another plate, and make it the chef's special." The staff hesitated, but nobody disobeyed Alexander Whitmore. Within minutes, Lily found herself staring at a plate of roasted chicken with creamy potatoes and steamed vegetables, the kind of meal she hadn't tasted since childhood. She hesitated, glancing around at the people watching, but Alexander gave a small nod, as if to say, "Go ahead." She picked up the fork, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it, and then she took a bite. Tears stung her eyes as flavors filled her mouth warm, rich, comforting. She tried to hide her tears, but Alexander noticed. He noticed everything. As she ate, Alexander studied her. She wasn't just a hungry girl. There was something in her eyes, resilience, pain, but also a kind of unbroken spirit. He felt strangely protective of her, though he didn't even know her name yet. When she finally slowed down, embarrassed at how quickly she had eaten, he leaned forward. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily," he repeated, as if the name itself carried music. "Tell me something, Lily. Why were you outside my window tonight?" And so, haltingly, she told him, about the hunger, about the loneliness, about the nights she had slept on benches, and the days she searched for work but was turned away. She didn't ask for pity, she spoke as if simply sharing facts. Her pride stitched into every word, even as her voice cracked out by the end. Alexander's chest felt heavy. For years, he had thought the world cruel only to him, that his pain was unique. But here sat a girl with nothing, and yet her eyes still held a spark of light. He thought he'd lost forever. Something stirred inside him, an impulse to do something, to change something. What neither of them knew was that this single meeting, this request for leftovers, would unravel secrets long buried, lead to betrayals and revelations, and ultimately, change both of their lives forever. Lily didn't remember the last time she had eaten until she was full, yet here she was, staring at an empty plate, her body warm for the first time in weeks. But even warmer was the way Alexander kept looking at her, not with pity, not with disgust, but with a strange gentleness that unsettled her. She wasn't used to kindness without conditions. In her life, every smile came with strings, every hand offered was waiting to take something back. So, when he leaned back in his chair, studying her with curiosity rather than judgment, she shifted uneasily, as if waiting for the trap to spring. "You don't owe me anything," she blurted, her cheeks burning. "I'll leave. Thank you for the food." She started to rise, but Alexander held up his hand, the simple gesture commanding her to sit again. "If you leave now, you'll walk back into the cold with nothing, and you'll hate yourself tomorrow for not letting someone help." His voice was calm, almost weary, but it struck her because it was the first time anyone had spoken to her as though her survival mattered. She hesitated, then slowly sank back into her chair, though she kept her arms folded protectively across her chest. Alexander waved for dessert. The waiter brought chocolate soufflé, steam rising from its center, dusted with sugar like fresh snow. Lily stared at it, wide-eyed, before glancing at him suspiciously. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "People like you don't. You don't stop for people like me." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched her take a tentative bite, watched her eyes close in wonder, watched her lips tremble as if the sweetness itself was too much. Finally, he said, "Because once, years ago, I asked for help too, and no one came." His words dropped like stones between them. She opened her eyes, surprised. She wanted to ask more, but something in his expression warned her not to push. The evening wore on, and when they stepped outside, the city felt sharper, colder, the mist curling around the street lamps like ghosts. Lily pulled her coat tighter, preparing to thank him and walk away, but Alexander surprised her again. "Where will you sleep tonight?" The question froze her in place. Her instinct was to lie, to protect what little dignity she had left. But his gaze was steady, and something about it told her he would see through any falsehood. "I don't know," she admitted finally, her voice so soft it was nearly swallowed by the street noise. "I'll manage." Alexander glanced at the sleek black car waiting at the curb, then back at her. He was a man who made decisions quickly in business, and now that same decisiveness flared. "You're coming with me?" She blinked, stunned. "What? No, I can't." "You can. And you will." Panic surged in her. I don't go home with men for money, if that's what you're thinking." Her voice cracked with shame, but she forced the words out. Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with something like anger, not at her, but at the world that had made her think that way. "I'm not asking for that. I'm asking because you need shelter, and because something tells me this isn't the end of our story." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she found herself sliding into the warmth of his car, her heart pounding as the city blurred past the tinted windows. His home, when they arrived, was not just a house, it was a mansion. Sprawling and grand, perched on the edge of the Thames, with glass walls that reflected the city lights. Inside, marble floors gleamed, paintings lined the walls, and a silence hung so thick it felt like another presence. Lily stood there awkwardly, her muddy shoes leaving faint prints on the polished floor. "I don't belong here," she whispered. Alexander's voice was quiet. "Neither do I. Most nights." He led her to a guest room larger than any place she'd ever lived, with a bed that looked like a cloud. She touched the sheets as though they might vanish. "This is too much," she said, tears stinging her eyes. "I'll leave in the morning." He only nodded, though inside, something in him rebelled against the thought of her disappearing. He didn't understand it himself why he cared, why he felt drawn to her. But as he closed the door, he whispered under his breath, "Good night, Lily." And for the first time in years, he felt less alone. The days that followed should have been simple. She would eat, rest, regain her strength, and move on. But nothing about their connection was simple. Alexander found excuses to linger near her, asking questions about her past, listening to her halting stories of childhood. She discovered small pieces of him, to how he hated the emptiness of wealth, how he distrusted the people who flocked to him only for what he could give. Their conversations stretched late into the night, sometimes in silence, sometimes in laughter that surprised them both. Slowly, cautiously, trust began to weave itself between them, but the world doesn't allow miracles without testing them first. One morning, while Lily was in the kitchen making tea, still awkward in her borrowed pajamas, an elegant woman swept into the house. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a fur coat and heels that clicked like accusations on the floor. She looked Lily up and down with icy disdain. "And who?" the woman asked, her voice dripping with venom. "Is this?" Alexander appeared in the doorway, his expression hardening. "She's a guest." The woman arched a brow. "A guest? Or another charity case to feed your guilt?" Lily flushed scarlet, her throat tight. She wanted to vanish. The woman Alexander's ex-fiancée, a socialite who had once been by his side when fortune smiled brightest. Their engagement had ended in betrayal, her greed exposed when she attempted to steal shares of his company during a vulnerable time. but she had a way of slithering back, reminding him of wounds that hadn't fully healed. Alexander, Veronica purred, ignoring Lily entirely. Your board won't approve of this. Imagine the scandal bringing strays into your mansion. Something snapped in Alexander. His voice was steel. She has more dignity in her little finger than you've ever had. Veronica, leave. Shock flashed across the woman's face, quickly replaced by fury. You'll regret this, she hissed, and stormed out, her perfume lingering like poison. Lily stood frozen, guilt clawing at her. I don't want to cause trouble for you, she whispered. But Alexander shook his head. You didn't cause it, she did, and I don't regret a word. Still, the incident rattled Lily. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she wondered what kind of man risked his reputation for someone like her. She also wondered what it meant that her heart raced whenever he was near. She had promised herself never to depend on anyone. Again, dependence only led to pain. But with Alexander, walls she thought were permanent began to crack. Meanwhile, far from the mansion, Veronica made her own plans. Humiliated, she began whispering to investors, planting seeds of doubt about Alexander's judgment. She spoke of a mysterious girl who had appeared in his life, hinting she might be manipulating him, perhaps even blackmailing him. The business world thrived on rumor, and soon whispers grew into storms. Within days, Alexander found himself facing calls from board members questioning his decisions, his leadership, his stability. He brushed it off in public, but inside, anger simmered. He didn't blame Lily, he blamed Veronica. But he also knew Lily's presence in his life was no longer a private matter. The climax of that week came unexpectedly. Lily had gone out to walk by the river, needing space, when she noticed a man watching her from across the street. At first, she dismissed him as a passerby, but when she moved, he moved. When she turned, he turned. Fear prickled her skin. She hurried back toward the mansion, but the man followed. By the time she reached the gates, her hands were shaking. She didn't tell Alexander at first. She didn't want to sound paranoid, but when it happened again the next day, she confessed. His reaction was immediate and fierce. He ordered additional security, his voice tight with fury. But what he didn't tell her, what he couldn't bring himself to admit, was that he suspected Veronica had set someone on her, hoping to dig up dirt or worse. The thought of Lily being harmed because of him was unbearable. And yet, even as danger circled, neither of them could ignore the truth anymore. They were no longer strangers bound by chance. They were something more, though neither dared to say it aloud. One night, as rain lashed against the glass walls of the mansion, Alexander found Lily in the library, curled up with a blanket. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her before finally stepping closer. You've changed this house, he said quietly. She looked up, puzzled. It feels alive again because of you. Her chest tightened. Words rose to her lips, gratitude, disbelief. Something more, but before she could speak, a crash of thunder rattled the windows. She startled, and without thinking, he reached for her hand. For a moment, the storm outside didn't matter. For a moment, it was just the two of them, hearts racing, hands entwined, standing on the edge of something neither could deny. The storm outside seemed to mirror the one quietly forming inside Alexander's world. As the days turned into weeks, whispers about him and the mysterious girl spread faster than wildfire. Business associates who once admired his sharp mind now questioned his judgment. Tabloids snapped photographs of Lily whenever she dared to step outside, and the image of the powerful, untouchable millionaire began to crack. For Alexander, reputation had always been armor, but now that armor was splintering, and the only thing he cared about was keeping Lily safe. Yet even as he tried to shield her, Lily struggled with guilt. She knew she was the source of his troubles, no matter how many times he insisted otherwise. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was dragging him down, a weight tied to his feet as he tried to stand tall in a world that demanded perfection. One evening, after another call from the board questioning his choices, Alexander found Lily in the garden. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of roses, their petals trembling under the moonlight. She was sitting on a bench, her shoulders hunched, her expression distant. You should let me go, she whispered before he could even speak. His chest tightened. What? I don't belong here. You're risking everything, your company, your name, because of me. And for what? A girl who asked for leftovers. Her voice broke, and tears glittered in her eyes. Alexander moved closer, his voice low but firm. Don't ever reduce yourself to that moment. You are not a girl who begged for scraps. You are a girl who looked me in the eyes and reminded me that I still have a heart. You're the first person in years who has made me feel human again, and I will not let you go. Her lips parted as if to argue, but the conviction in his eyes silenced her. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of someone fighting for her instead of against her. And yet, fate was not finished testing them. The next morning, a scandal broke. A photograph hit the front pages of several tabloids. Lily, entering Alexander's mansion, her coat ragged, her hair unkempt, the headline screaming, "Millionaire's secret mistress. Stranger in rags captures Whitmore's heart." The story was laced with lies, claims that she was a con artist, a manipulator who had lured him into her web. Some papers even suggested she was pregnant with his child. Others speculated she had a criminal past. Lily was horrified, but Alexander remained calm, at least outwardly. They want to break us, he told her. And they won't succeed. But inside, anger burned. He knew Veronica was behind this. She had always been ruthless, and this was her way of twisting the knife. What they didn't expect was the next twist. 2 days later, Lily was walking back from a corner shop when the man who had been watching her finally made his move. He approached her on a quiet street, his voice low, his smile unsettling. "You don't know who you really are, do you?" Her heart thudded. "What are you talking about?" He chuckled, pulling a faded envelope from his coat. "Ask your millionaire. He knows more than he tells you." And then, before she could stop him, he slipped the envelope into her pocket and vanished into the crowd. Shaken, Lily hurried back to the mansion. Alone in her room, she opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single photograph, a woman holding a baby. The woman's face was blurred with age, but something about her features struck Lily with a jolt of recognition. Her own eyes, her own smile. Written on the back were just 4 words: "Find the Whitmore truth." Confusion flooded her. What did this mean? Who was the woman? Why Whitmore? She rushed to Alexander, clutching the photograph. His face drained of color the moment he saw it. "Where did you get this?" His voice was harsh, urgent. "A man gave it to me," said you. "Know the truth." For a long moment, Alexander said nothing. His jaw worked, his fists clenched, his gaze flickered with a storm of emotions. Finally, he whispered, "I didn't want you to find out this way." Lily's stomach dropped. "Find out what?" He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were raw. "That woman in the picture was your mother?" Her breath caught. The room spun. "What?" "For my family years ago, she was kind, gentle, but life was cruel to her. When you were born, she left suddenly, without explanation. I was a boy then, but I remember her. And when I saw you that night in the restaurant, I knew you were her daughter." Lily staggered back, the photograph trembling in her grip. "You knew all this time, and you didn't tell me." "I wasn't sure," Alexander said desperately. "I wanted to be certain before I said anything. And then, I couldn't bring myself to, because the more I got to know you, the more it mattered to me. Not because of who your mother was, but because of who you are." Her chest heaved. Rage and heartbreak tangled inside her. She felt betrayed, blindsided, as if the ground had been ripped from beneath her. "So what am I to you?" she whispered, tears spilling. "A charity case, a ghost from your past, or just another way for you to soothe your conscience?" Lily? No, but she was already running. The photograph clutched to her chest, the walls of the mansion closing in on her. She fled into the night, ignoring the rain, ignoring the calls of his security guards. Her heart felt like it would shatter. For hours she wandered the city streets, replaying everything. The kindness he had shown her, the safety she had felt, the laughter they had shared, it all felt tainted now. Was it real, or was it because of some hidden connection he had never revealed? Exhaustion dragged at her, but she couldn't go back. Not now. She found shelter under a bridge, curling up on a bench, the cold seeping back into her bones. For the first time in weeks, she was truly alone again. Meanwhile, Alexander tore through the city, searching for her, his chest tight with panic. He cursed himself for not telling her sooner, for thinking he could protect her from the truth. His phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from board members, investors, even his lawyer, but he ignored them all. The only thing that mattered was finding her. Yet as dawn broke, he realized something else. The man who had delivered the photograph wasn't finished. This was bigger than Veronica's schemes. Someone out there knew too much about Lily's past, and they intended to use it. Indeed, across town, Veronica sat in a luxurious office, her smile cold as ice. She had hired the man to dig into Lily's history, hoping to find dirt. Instead, he had uncovered a secret even she hadn't expected that. Lily's bloodline was connected to the Whitmore family in ways that could destroy Alexander's empire. Because if Lily's mother had once been entangled with Alexander's late father, then Lily might not just be a girl from nowhere. She might have a claim to everything Alexander owned. And that revelation was a weapon Veronica intended to use. The morning after Lily fled, the city seemed to pulse with rumors. Newspapers screamed with new headlines. Whitmore heiress discovered. Mystery girl may inherit fortune. Photographers swarmed the gates of Alexander's mansion. Investors panicked as shares dipped, and whispers filled boardrooms like smoke before fire. Alexander, however, cared little for the chaos of business. His only thought was Lily lost somewhere in the city, frightened, betrayed, believing she had been nothing more than a secret in his gilded life. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, and every time his phone rang with another demand from the board, he silenced it. None of it mattered if she was gone. Meanwhile, Lily sat in a dim cafe, clutching the photograph, her tea long since gone cold. She stared at her mother's blurred face, trying to find answers in features she barely remembered. Questions battered her mind. Why had her mother left? Was she connected to the Whitmore family? And if so, what did that make Lily? An heiress? A fraud? Or simply a girl trapped in a cruel twist of fate? She hated herself for caring about Alexander even now, for missing the way he looked at her, for longing for the safety of his presence. But trust was fragile, and once broken, it cut deeper than hunger ever had. She didn't know that Veronica's schemes were reaching their peak. In a grand boardroom across town, Veronica stood before Alexander's board of directors, presenting documents she claimed proved Lily was the illegitimate daughter of Alexander's late father. Her words dripped with venom, her smile sharp as a blade. If this information reaches the press and it could destroy everything. Investors will flee, the family name will be dragged through the mud, and the company will collapse. Under scandal, unless of course you consider new leadership. Gasps filled the room, the board shifting uneasily. Veronica wasn't just attacking Alexander's reputation, she was trying to take his empire. Her plan was simple: paint him as reckless, disloyal to the company, blinded by a girl who had stumbled in from the streets, then step in as the savior with connections to stabilize the storm. And for a moment, it seemed to work. Some board members began to whisper about votes of no confidence, about removing Alexander from his position. But Alexander was no stranger to betrayal. The moment he heard of the meeting, he stormed into the boardroom, his presence like thunder rolling through the air. "You dare," he said, his voice low but lethal, "to use her name to claw your way back into power." Veronica smirked, unfazed. "It's not me using her, Alexander. It's you. You plucked her off the street, paraded her through your mansion, let the world believe she's some miracle when really she's nothing more than a say one more word." Alexander snapped, his eyes blazing, "And I'll make sure you never set foot in this building again." But the board was unsettled. Questions hung heavy. Was Lily truly tied to the wit? Could she lay claim to Alexander's inheritance? And most importantly, did his relationship with her compromise his judgment? Alexander left the boardroom knowing one thing: the only way to silence the storm was the truth. And that truth lay not in whispered accusations or forged documents, but in Lily herself. He had to find her, had to show her that no matter what blood tied her to his family, she was not a scandal, she was his future. The search took him through the heart of the city, his car weaving through narrow streets, his eyes scanning sidewalks with desperation. Finally, in the dim light of dusk, he saw her sitting alone by the riverbank, the photograph clutched to her chest, her shoulders hunched against the cold. Relief crashed over him so fiercely he could barely breathe. He approached slowly, afraid she might run. "Lily," he said softly. She turned, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, her voice broken. He sank to his knees before her, rain soaking through his coat, his hands trembling, as he reached for hers. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd see it as chains instead of truth. Afraid you'd think everything between us was a lie. But listen to me now. Whatever your mother's past, whatever blood you carry, it changes nothing. Nothing about what you mean to me." Her tears spilled harder. "But the world, your world, thinks I'm a fraud. They think I'm using you." His grip on her hands tightened. "Let them think what they want. For years I lived in that world, and it was empty, hollow, cold. Then you walked into my life and reminded me that love is not about appearances, or names, or fortunes. It's about souls, and my soul has found yours." She shook her head, torn between belief and fear. What if Veronica is right? What if I do have a claim to your fortune? What if everything they say is true? He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Then let it be true. Take every penny, take the empire, take my name, I don't care. All I want is you. That night in the restaurant, when you asked for leftovers, you gave me something far greater than food or fortune. You gave me a reason to live again. That was the miracle, and I won't let go of it." Something in his words, in his raw sincerity, broke through the fortress of doubt around her heart. She leaned into his touch, her sobs quieting, the photograph slipping from her fingers into the wet grass. "I don't want your money," she whispered. I just want you." And for the first time, she believed it herself. But their battle wasn't over. The next day, Alexander walked into the boardroom with Lily at his side. The room buzzed with whispers, eyes narrowing, cameras flashing from journalists who had been tipped off. Veronica stood proudly at the head of the table, certain of her victory. But Alexander's voice cut through the noise with commanding clarity. "You want the truth? Here it is. Yes, Lily's mother once worked for my family. Yes, there is a chance she is tied by blood to the Whitmores, but none of you have the right to use her life as a weapon. She is not a scandal. She is not a fraud. She is a survivor stronger than anyone in this room, and she has more integrity than a lot of you combined." Veronica laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "So you admit it. She's a threat to everything you own. She could take it all from you." Alexander turned to Lily, his hand finding hers. "If she wants it, she can have it, and I will still stand by her, because what I've built means nothing without her beside me." The room fell into stunned silence. No one had expected him to lay down his empire so willingly. Veronica's face twisted with rage, her carefully spun plans unraveling. She spat venom, trying to rally the board, but it was too late. One by one, the directors began to murmur not against Alexander, but in admiration of his conviction. Investors feared weakness, but they respected strength. And nothing was stronger than a man willing to sacrifice everything for love. In that moment, the tide turned. Veronica's power crumbled, her influence shattered. Security escorted her out as she screamed threats that no one believed anymore. and as the doors closed behind her, Alexander turned to Lily, his heart in his eyes. The boardroom, the press, the whispers, all of it faded. There was only her. Later that evening, on the balcony of the mansion overlooking the city lights, Lily stood wrapped in his coat as Alexander joined her. The storm had passed, the air clear, the stars shining faintly above. She looked at him, her heart finally calm. "Why me?" she asked softly. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because when you asked for my leftovers, you gave me something no one else ever could. You gave me hope. And hope, Lily, is worth more than all the fortunes in the world." Her lips trembled, and before she could speak, he kissed her soft at first, then deeper, a kiss that sealed not just love but a promise that no matter what the world said, no matter what storms came, they would face them together. For Lily, the girl who once asked for scraps, and Alexander, the millionaire who thought he had everything but discovered he had nothing without her, this was the miracle they had both been waiting for. And as the city lights shimmered below, two souls who should never have met found their forever in each other, proving that sometimes the smallest question, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" can lead to the greatest love story of all.